To all those people watching, I would like to remind everyone that this video is not made strictly for kids. It is for older fans and adults too. Enjoy the fucking video! This video is brought to you by my loyal patrons. Register now at any tier to watch new videos 1 month in advance before they're made public. Link is in the description. Thomas and Edward had been requested to attend by the organisers of the Rails 150 celebration at Shildon, but Percy had been in an accident with a lorry when pulling a train from the quarry and had to go to the works to be repaired. The work was to take a long time, and Sir Charles Topham Hatt had to pull Thomas out of the festivities in order to bring ballast to the branch line. This of course made Thomas upset, but he knew that Toby couldn't handle the work alone, and the railway was far too busy to spare an engine. Meanwhile, over in Scotland, Bloomer was sold to Sir Charles from the Scottish region of the other railway. He was left in the shed in Wigton after breaking down, and a man called Nick had looked after him for a long time. The line where Bloomer was kept had closed down, and the condition was in terrible shape. So, he was transferred by lorry to the nearest yard that would load him on a train. Bloomer was surprised when he saw that the engine wasn't like his kind. "Excuse me, sir," he called to the diesel, "but why aren't you running on steam?" "Steam?" grunted the diesel. "I'm not a steam engine. I'm a diesel engine for criminy sake." "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't know what a diesel is," replied Bloomer apologetically. The diesel looked towards the engine confused. "What? You don't know what a diesel is?" "I certainly don't," replied Bloomer. "Where were you all this time, old man, in a shed?" "Well, I was," interjected Bloomer. "Don't get smart with me, big wheels. Now get on my wagon. I'm to take you to the place where they have your kind." And so Bloomer was loaded, and the diesel rolled away with his train. As he was rolling down the line on his flatbed, Bloomer saw more diesels rolling around on the main line. Bloomer felt like a fish out of water when he saw all this. He was glad to know that where he was going was filled with steam engines, but all the same he was sad from what he was seeing. This isn't the world that I know anymore. If you ever visit the island of Sodor and are interested in the stories from the various railways, then you should visit the Railway Archives. It's a treasure trove of stories over the years with all of the engines across the island of Sodor, big or small. Let's take a look at all the stories that are a blast from the past for the engines of Sodor. Jeff the Works diesel collected Bloomer in the yards at Barrow and brought him to Provincegate. Meanwhile, Percy was waiting at a siding. He was still feeling bad about making Thomas miss out on the celebration. "It wasn't your fault, Percy," comforted Edward, who was at the works being checked over for the celebrations. "The Fat Controller told me that Thomas understands that he needed to help out." That made Percy feel a bit better. Then they saw Bloomer. "Who is that?" asked Percy. "Don't know," sighed Jeff. "I tried talking to him, but I think he's just tired. It's a long journey from Scotland, I bet." And he rolled away to carry on with his work. Bloomer looked towards the two and smiled. "Hey, it's good to see something familiar after a long journey," he said. "Were you on the island before?" asked Percy. "Nay," replied Bloomer. "I met you as a steam engine. Hardly saw any over the border." "Hello there, I'm Edward, and this is my friend Percy. You're Bloomer, are you?" "Indeed I am. Salutations, Edward and Percy," greeted Bloomer. "He has very good manners," replied Percy, who felt flattered. "Salutation to you as well, Bloomer." Bloomer and Edward chuckled. "It's salutations, Percy," replied Edward. Don't feel too down, it was just funny. But you'll get it next time. I say, you're a Bloomer-type engine. Indeed I am, hence the name. I've heard about your class, but never got to see any of them since many have been scrapped. Scrapped? Asked Bloomer. What's scrap? Haven't you ever heard that word before, Bloomer? Asked Percy, astonished. No, I haven't, Percy. The two engines looked towards each other sadly. Edward gulped and explained everything. Bloomer looked towards them with a sense of dread. So that's why there aren't steam engines on the mainland anymore? He gasped. I'm sorry that you have to hear it, Bloomer, but it happened because the railway on the mainland thought diesels are the way. But many of us had survived here on Sodor, and you should be lucky, that I'm the one left in my class, and that steam engines are all extinct across the border. At what cost, Edward? At what cost am I lucky? Edward and Percy tried to say that some had been preserved on the mainland, but Bloomer was in such a state that they decided to leave him alone. But then Edward had an idea. Later on, Sir Charles Topham Hatt had come to the works to see Bloomer. Hello, Bloomer. Glad to see you're here safe and sound. Are you all right? Sir, is it true that all steam engines are gone? And he then explained what Edward and Percy had said to him earlier. Yes, Bloomer, it is true. Poor Bloomer was on the verge of tears. It was much nicer when I was in my shed. At least I was safe from the horrors of this reality. Calm down, Bloomer. You must know that. But Bloomer didn't want to listen to anything else, and so Sir Charles walked towards Percy and Edward. We didn't mean to upset him, sir, replied Percy. I know you two don't mean any harm, but I think you should try and be careful on what you say. Yes, sir, replied the engines. How's the search going on for Thomas's replacement, sir? Not good. I can't find a single engine who can be free to take Thomas's place. I might have to tell the organisers that I could only bring one. Do you have a suggestion, Edward? I do, sir. And then he explained the idea. Sir Charles smiled. You're a genius, Edward! The arrangements were made with the organisers, and Bloomer was placed back onto the rails, and the workmen started to do some work on him. What's going on? He asked. We are restoring you, replied one of the workmen. Cosmetically, of course, added another. Cosmetically? What for? He asked. You'll see, replied another. At last, Bloomer was all repaired, and one day he was placed onto a lorry. Bloomer was puzzled. I've already been on a lorry over in Scotland. Why am I going on another one? Am I being scrapped? He whimpered. Not scrap, replied Jeff, but you'll see when you get there. Later that night, Bloomer arrived at a rail yard. It was too dark for Bloomer to see once he was placed onto some rails, but he was so tired that he went to sleep at once. Next morning, Bloomer was awakened by a whistle. And then he heard another, and another, and another, and finally, he saw that he was surrounded by different types of engines, but they were all powered by steam. What is this? He gasped. Edward puffed up alongside. This, Bloomer, is all the preserved steam engines on the mainland. Preserved? What's that? He asked. It means, replied Edward, they are being taken care of by people who have an interest in steam engines. You'll be a guest at the Rail 150 event here in Shildon, and will be on public display while also taking part in the cavalcade with me. I will pull you. It was my idea to bring you here to show you that steam still has room to bloom in a more modern-day world. Bloomer was happy. For a few days while Edward was pulling trains from Shildon to Darlington, lots of people came to see Bloomer on display inside a big shed. Everyone was amazed to see that a member of his class was still around. Even the thin clergyman who attended the event was amazed as well. While people were admiring him, he looked around and saw all sorts of engines, and he was happy to see that many of them. Even though he was the sole survivor of his own class, he was glad that steam engines of all types had been preserved. On the last day of the celebrations, he and Edward took part in the cavalcade. Lots of people cheered and waved, and some have been filming and taking photographs of them. The next day, Bloomer was loaded onto the lorry while Edward was in the yard getting ready to take Sir Charles and his family's private train back to Sodor. Hope you had a good time, Bloomer? Indeed I did, Edward. Thank you. I'll see you back home. When he returned, he was later restored back into full working order, hauling charter trains for various railway societies who came to see the island. He had also taken part in the Rocket 150 celebrations 5 years after the Rail 150 events with Edward and this time Thomas. Over the years, Bloomer attended many events in celebration of rail as well as visiting heritage railway lines on the mainland and seeing many different engines and reuniting with the ones he had seen at Shildon. Bloomer was happy with his new life and was glad there was room to bloom for steam.